Welcome to Roundabout Oxford, a podcast from the University of Mississippi Libraries.
This time on Roundabout Oxford, we set off in search of art and adventure in Oxford. First off, our very own Carmen Sanchez Garcia talks with Vivian and Walter Neil, owners of the Oxford Treehouse Gallery, a showcase for more than 30 regional artists and a must-see destination for lovers of local color. Next, Carmen and Science Library head Harley Rogers talked to Katie Boyle about Oxford Wonder Walks, a nature-adventure experience for budding backyard scientists. Finally, Alex Langhart has the buzz on mosquitoes in the latest installment of What's Plaguing Us.
My name is Carmen Sanchez Garcia, and I'm joined today by the owners of the Oxford Treehouse Gallery here in Oxford. Can you introduce yourselves?
I am Vivian Neil.
And I'm Walter Neil.
How did the idea of opening this gallery start?
Well, on this property, we originally built Walter's blacksmith/sculpture shop. And we were building an office/studio space for myself, which Walter built, and he overbuilt. So we knew that ultimately we would share it with other artists. We had occasional art events here, and for a few years. But we were living in an apartment downstairs, and so it was difficult to open it to the public while we were still here.
Right.
To open it to the public that often. But Walter also built our home, which is on the same property about 200 yards away. Once we got into our house, we were able to get the gallery open full time and invite other artists to show with us.
Okay. And why did you decide to open the gallery behind this idea?
I think we really both thought that we could provide a place where people would be able to come and find art that was affordable and nice and have a big variety, and we kind of wanted it to be a destination because it is about 7.5 miles from the square.
Right. And how did you come up with the name?
It took us a minute, but we wanted the name to represent the space, and there were only a few trees that we had to take down to build this building in this location, and two of those trees, the cedar trees, are used for the post on the front porch. And also, when you enter the gallery and you go to the back porch, you're elevated, you're up in the trees, and there are these cypress trees that envelop the back porch, which is huge, and it does feel like you're in a treehouse when you're on the back porch.
And we also have a couple of trees that hold up one end of the porch.
It's an unlikely location for an art gallery in this rural setting. We consider that both our biggest asset and biggest hurdle. The asset is that when people come out, they generally just get a real chill vibe and appreciate that, but they have to drive. We're not right in town, and even though we're only 7 miles from town, like I said, it's an unlikely location, and a lot of people get confused when they go, get out into the county and wonder where they're going.
What type of artwork do you present in this gallery?
We have ceramics. I took ceramics at Ole Miss for about 3 years and got to meet a lot of really great ceramicists, and so we're lucky to have them. We have 2 jewelers, one pretty much full-time, and then the rest are mostly paintings. We do have some metal sculpture. I do metal sculpture.
We have other sculpture artists, and then block prints as well as paintings. But it's a little bit of everything.
So I would say mostly paintings.
Yeah, mostly paintings. Mostly two-dimensional work.
Yeah.
Do you decide what kind of work do you want to incorporate, or how does it work?
Yeah, we work together on that, and a lot of people email us and say, well, can you put my work in your gallery? And so we look at it, and a lot of the artists we already knew, and so we were fortunate enough to carry them. And from time to time, we find somebody that we want to carry, but we both have to like the work.
So that's our complicated curatorial process. We have to like.
So how do you contact the artist?
It's pretty organic, or it has been so far. Like as Walter said, when we first opened, we were fortunate enough to be able to carry work by artists that we had collected and knew us well enough to know that this wasn't some sort of a lame brain idea, this art gallery out in the county. And then it's been word of mouth mostly after that. Artists will contact us, and then we have seen others, artwork that we have really loved and, inquired with the artists to see if they're interested in showing with us. We look for things that enhance what we've already got. We like to have a really wide variety of works. We are a destination, and so when people come here, they want to see a lot of work. It's not like a traditional gallery that changes a show by one artist out every month. We need to have a lot for people to look at when they come. So that's a real driving force, is just to make sure that we have an interesting variety, and we try not to be too repetitive.
And some of the artists that we found, like we had that South Mississippi Arts League that came, and it was a bunch of people that had a show here, and so now we still carry some of those artists that were in that show.
Yeah.
One time Vivian took a workshop in Apalachicola, and there was this guy there that was just a great painter. Stephen Walker. And so Vivian befriended him, and then she said, we sure would like to carry your work here. So we're fortunate enough to carry his work. So it kind of just happens like that. You never know.
It's not solely regional artists, but we really do focus on regional artists. And we've got some outliers like Stephen Walker's from Georgia, Eric Pardue, one of our potters, is from West Virginia. And we have another artist from Greenville, South Carolina, but most everybody else is in the Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee area. And a lot of that is logistics. It's easier to get paintings to us. We do a lot of traveling to pick up artwork, and so it just makes more sense for this place to stay in this region mostly.
So it's mainly Southern artists. If someone wants to visit the Oxford Treehouse Gallery, what are you displaying right now?
Well, right now we're just chock full of work from 30 plus artists.
So much so that some of it's leaning against pedestals or against the wall because there's so many pieces already on the wall. So we're packed full. And we have other things in storage that we can pull out and show people if they're looking for a particular artist.
You can guide them.
Yeah.
Right.
And another thing is, like, a lot of people who are renovating their homes or just moving to Oxford, we offer this service. If they see things they like, we will happily deliver, let them look at them on site. There's no obligation. So, we like to work with decorators or people that are decorating their homes, and again, we've got a big variety.
And I think you both are artists, right? So, Walter and Vivian, can you describe us what you do?
Well, I've for most of my life, I've painted or done block prints, and I can't say that I have for long stretches of time, except for when I went back to school, focused my daily practice, because I'm running the business. So I try to get as much studio time as possible. But what I have been doing recently are landscapes about where I live or where I used to live. So just kind of immersing myself in my environment. We don't travel far, and so I take from my daily experiences, for my paintings. Walter, on the other hand, is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, when I was in Jackson, I did functional metalwork, blacksmithing, and some sculpture. And then when I first had my shop here, I made mostly functional things, fireplace screens, fire tools, bottle openers, cheese knives, steak turners, all kinds of things. And I still do some of that. But I really like doing sculpture. And so I started back doing sculpture probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And that's really fulfilling to me. But just like Vivian, I have a lot of things to do, especially this time of year with gardening and cutting grass and all that. So I hadn't been in the shop to do anything for a couple of months. But when I can, and I do, it's very fulfilling. But when you're not doing it, you feel like you're not doing anything. I've lost it.
Right.
But it's not quite that way.
No, but to brag on Walter here, I mean, last year, I guess, he was part of the Mississippi Invitational, or the year before, Mississippi Invitational at the Museum of Art in Jackson. And then following that, they acquired one of his pieces for their permanent collection.
Oh, congratulations. That's excellent.
Yeah, and I've just had one in a show at the Lauren Rogers Museum. It was a group show, but that was fun. And I got to make one for the Harvest Supper, and I've got to make one for the Museum of Art in Jackson. So that'll get me back in the studio doing something.
And do you display your work here at the gallery? People can have one of your
At
pieces?
the moment, I do have some small pieces in the gallery, but I go for long stretches with nothing here. So. But it's fun to promote other people's work. So that's been my focus.
Do you have any favorite pieces or favorite type of art that you like here in the gallery that you say, this is my favorite piece?
Oh man, we do that all the time. I mean, it's so tempting to take everything home with us. I can't say specifically what are my favorite pieces, but there are so many that just, are outstanding.
And somebody asked one time, what art sells the best? And we say, it's always something that we've considered taking home, or that we really, really, really feel strong about. And sometimes we take a few things home, but usually we sell them. And sometimes we miss them.
The Oxford Treehouse Gallery holds other events as well, right? It's not just a gallery.
We did promote ourselves as an event venue.
Okay.
Up until COVID, and then all of that just naturally came to a halt, and then we didn't get back into promoting it as an event venue heavily because during COVID, online purchasing increased, and so we felt like we were spending more time doing what we had intended to do originally, which was sell art. And when we do events here, we don't do any high maintenance, high intensity events anymore, because literally like a wedding or something like that, it's a good 3 days of manual labor on the back side of the event, as well as all the coordinating. So we've really steered our efforts more towards the art promotion and art sales rather than events. But coming up this next month, the theater department at Ole Miss is going to do a retreat, and then they think another faction of the theater department is going to do one. We'll do, the Newcomers Club is going to meet here. Sometimes people will bring their book club, and if the weather's lovely, they're just on the porch, either with the gallery open or not. We love for people to use the space. We're just we're not promoting the
large
events anymore. But we also have the apartment that we lived in while we were building the house. It's on Airbnb. Okay. So that's another component of the gallery is the Airbnb space, and we have a lot of activity there.
So what was your last event?
This past April, we had the gallery's 9th birthday. And we do this 2 or 3 times a year anyway, not the birthday, but we'll have, I'll make big batches of lasagna, we'll serve people, we'll have drinks and dinner. We had music on the porch. It was, and people are here to shop or not shop, just to come and enjoy the space. So and then last weekend we had another pop-up with Tish Jewelry, and we'll probably do, I'm not sure what we've got lined up before like Christmas open house, but we'll have another event of some kind when the weather cools a little.
Just my last question. What do you do in your free time? What things do you do around Oxford?
Well, we both like to ride bicycles. That's kind of our fun hobby. So we get in groups and we just ride around in big circles. Basically.
More that's in the county rather than in town.
Yeah, it's in the county, but in town we like to go to dinner, and there are a lot of things to do off the square. There's music we don't go see quite as much as we used to, but sometimes we do that. We're just kind of stuck here a lot.
So we do spend a lot of time here. There are times when I catch myself early week when the gallery doesn't have regular hours in town, and I just have to stop and remind myself to look around as if it's, as if I'm a tourist. Just enjoy the town rather than just going and running my errands and coming back.
I did want to mention one thing, and that is we're open like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from 12 to 5, and a lot of people think, oh, well, those are restricted hours. But the neat thing that we do, and it makes it easier for everybody, is to have appointments. So people can call us and pretty much come any day they want to, because one of us are usually around.
It's sometimes hard to convince people that it's not an inconvenience, but it's why we're here. It's what we love to do. We love to open the gallery. And if we're here, no day is off limits.
Thank you very much, Walter and
Thank
Vivian.
you, Carmen.
This has been a pleasure, and thank you for talking about this lovely and beautiful gallery, the Oxford Treehouse Gallery.
Thanks for thinking of us,
Thank you,
Karma.
and thanks for thinking of us, Karma.
Next, we continue with Carmen Sanchez Garcia, joined by science librarian Harley Rogers, for a journey with Oxford Wonderwalks.
Hello, my name is Harley Rogers.
Hello, my name is Carmen Sanchez.
And today we are talking with Katie Boyle about her program, Wonderwalks. Katie, do you mind introducing yourself and telling us what is Wonderwalks?
My name is Katie Boyle, and I own and run this program called Wonderwalks, and it's basically weekly hikes for kids at ages 2 to about 12, but after 12, I sort of take some kids on as interns, which is really fun too. And the hikes are all located on the Whirlpool Trails, which is actually a campus trail system. And for those of you who don't know, it's also called the South Campus Rail Trails because it's on a former railroad track. And so there's this like main trail that you can go down. A lot of people bike and run and hike. But off of that is this enormous trail system, like hundreds of acres, that's really beautiful and a great snapshot of Mississippi native landscapes. So we have a really good time hiking and exploring all around there.
So, Katie, what inspired you to start Wonderwalks?
Well, I've been kind of doing this for a long time. I accidentally fell into nature and working outdoors when I left college, and I moved to Texas for a little while in 2001. And I had no idea that people were doing all this cool stuff outside. I was an English major in college, so I was just like, oh, I thought we were just reading about poetry about outside. I didn't know people were actually being outside. But I thankfully got a lot of people who, kept giving me jobs and teaching me on the job and really believed in me and was building this career. And when we moved to Mississippi in 2008, and I worked at Strawberry Plains Audubon Center for a little while, but after I had my first child, it was just kind of a far commute. So I left that and was out of work for 2 years. And then I had my daughter, and, I just kind of missed having regular interaction with the outdoors. And I thought maybe some other parents who were busy and didn't quite have time, but valued that as well, would want someone to help their kids to experience that.
And what do you think is the most popular activity in Wonderwalks?
Well, I do all these different ages, so I think that would vary among ages. For the little kids, I do this little adventure section in Wonder Walks, and we'll tie up ropes and do kind of a tightrope where they have to climb across this tightrope, and all the kids think they can't do it at first because it's really wobbly and it's something kind of unusual and foreign to them, and they all get super excited when they actually can do it. And for the older kids, there's this great section of Wonder Walks back by one of the ponds that is full of bamboo. And as many of you probably know, or you all probably know, that bamboo is super invasive in our area. So I've allowed the kids to take down as much bamboo as they want, and they've built a village back there. And they have all sorts of, every year is a new sort of iteration of what they do with the village. But in the past, they've had towns where they'll have, a shop that sells flowers, or handcrafted weapons, or a town hall. So they really delve into their imaginations, and but also are able to do this like really physical landscape changing. And the kids get super excited about that. They also get to use saws, so that's really exciting for them too.
It is.
Okay, we already have a little bit touched on this, but who can participate?
So kids from the ages of 2 to 12 are officially participants, and any child under the age of 5, I require an adult guardian to come along, and I do that for a number of reasons. But after that, it's anyone who has interest, I hope will find me and participate.
So parents help you? Do you have a group of parents that they decide to go with you, or do you have other members of the community that they come and help you? How does it work?
Oh, that's a good question. So the parents, in the classes where the parents come, which again is all kids under the age of 5, I have an adult come along, and part of that is for safety, because if we see something really cool, like an amazing snail, or we found a praying mantis egg sac or something, and I've stopped to look at it and share that with whatever kids are interested. Of course, that limits my ability to keep track of all the other kids if they're wandering around. So parents do that as well. But I also do it because I like the idea of the parents knowing where we're at, and knowing that they can continue this without Wonder Walks. It is a program that costs money. But it's not. I'm not the only one that can engage in nature in that way. So I use it as a way to give parents ideas, and also to help them feel comfortable and safe in the outdoors, because if the adults in their lives feel comfortable and safe in the outdoors, the children will as well. So it's kind of a twofold goal for that. But I'm glad you asked about help, because I have had a lot of help from the university. In fact, there's a professor, Leah Tisler, and she works in the education department. And during COVID, her students prior to COVID, students were required to do some in-classroom time to fulfill their degrees or their class responsibilities. And when COVID happened, obviously they weren't allowed in the classroom, and kids sometimes weren't even in the classroom. So they found me, which I was so excited about. So now that tradition has continued, and it's every semester students from her class come out and they help me and observe 3 of my classes per semester, which gives them a different perspective on education, and it gives me some much needed help and having another adult around.
And do you have a specific program for Wonder Walks? Do you have a schedule for this weekend we're going to do this, the next weekend we're going to do that, or how do you organize it?
For the younger kids, it's more scheduled, and it's activity based. But for when there's younger kids, sometimes it's hard for them to sit still. Some kids have no interest in doing what the activity of the day is. So I really don't make any requirements of that for the younger kids. If they want to participate, they can. If they want to just splash in the creek, they can too. For all the younger classes, after our about 1/4 of a mile hike, we sit down and have a snack and read a story. And one of the great things about teaching outside is that, some kids, it's really hard for them to sit still. And even more than that, it's hard for them to focus unless their bodies are moving. So it provides a really good opportunity that even if a kid is playing in the creek, they can still hear me and telling the story, and it might be a better way for them to listen to the story. So I have a loose schedule for younger kids, and for older kids, I put things in my car. So I might have ropes in there, I might have saws, I might have water quality testing or art supplies, and they literally tell me what they want to do or where they want to go when I get there, and we take a vote about what they want to do, and I grab whatever supplies they are interested in bringing. So it's really child led in that way. Something I have come to learn more recently than I would care to admit is that from my experience in working with kids are really looking for connection with the adults that they're around, and their interests vary as much as ours do. So if I am so committed to my lesson plan, which when I first started environmental education and maybe wasn't as confident as I am today, I'd really always try to get back to that script. And I wound up missing these amazing moments. I can remember one time in particular, there was this mushroom that the kids came across. And this was kind of a paradigm shift moment for me. We were talking about maybe the life cycle of a frog or something. And they came across this mushroom and a kid poked it, because that's what kids do. And all of this sounds a little disgusting, but it was actually kind of beautiful. All this orange, the mushroom kind of descended into like an orange painty liquid, and the kids were fascinated by it. And I realized that in my bag I had paper, so we all just took these pieces of paper and we painted with these mushrooms, with this mushroom ink. But in doing that, we also learned what the mushroom was. I didn't know what it was, so we looked it up together and figured out what that mushroom was, and figured out why it looked the way it did, and how some mushrooms are classified in different ways, and how some have spores in different ways. And so we learned all about mushrooms that day. And I can tell you that from that day on, I got rid of my lesson plans and I just let the kids lead the way. And in doing that also was that, like, I would see what sparked for the kids. For some kids, their lives are so scheduled and all of their activities are very competitive. And my kids are in all the sports, so I completely understand the value of team sports and competitiveness. We're all about it. But when you get to Wonder Walks and it's just a chance to hang out with your friends and play, we might not learn the names of any species that day. But I know that the more time that they spend outside, the more of a foundational connection they'll have with nature, and the more that they will see themselves as part of nature. So I never interrupt play. I never interrupt kids talking to each other and having conversations and having that time to have a conversation. Even that is valuable to me. They're having that conversation outside. So lesson plans, I don't do it. Activities, we come about it when we come about it, but I always have a ton of stuff in my bag. And I think that whenever I meet another environmental educator, I always want to see what's in their bag, because that's like the most important part.
So it's not only fun time with your friends, game time, it has an educational perspective. So it's an educational program as well, without being too strict. So you go with the flow with the student, right?
We learn there is no way to go outside, especially as a child. Children are programmed in a different way, that they are programmed to be curious about things, and somewhere around 12, which is when my cutoff for Wonder Walks happens, they kind of start to see themselves as a big kid. So they don't engage with that curiosity as much, but they are the best teachers. And so I just go with what they want to learn about. And there's countless things to learn about. We could make a whole lesson about a leaf that's been chewed up, or if we see some eggs on a leaf, so it is always educational. It's just not educated, I guess. I don't know if that's the right way to think about it.
That makes sense. Do you have any specific hopes for the future, or do you see Wonder Walks evolving in any way?
There are a number of ways in which Wonder Walks can be improved, and I feel like there's a number of ways that I haven't lived up to what I want to do within the community. And mostly that is reaching kids who would really connect with that experience, but who have adults or parents or guardians who are not interested in the outdoors. So sometimes I feel like I'm preaching to the choir a little bit. Like I get the kids whose parents are probably going to take them outside anyway. And that's not true across the board, but I often get that feeling. And I would really love to figure out ways to reach the kids who might spark in nature, but otherwise don't have access to it.
So what is your favorite memory you have from a walk up to now?
Well, I was thinking about this, and it's every single time that I'm out there is so fulfilling and so memorable. So it's hard to narrow it down. But I was thinking about this time in order to get to that place. I talked about where they cut down all the bamboo. The kids have named it Kinderberg, which is all of the sites that we go to in the woods are all kid named. So they've named that place Kinderberg, and the only way to access it, it's across a creek. And the only way to access it is over this log bridge, which was standing for about 5 years. And one day we got there and the bridge had fallen into the water about halfway. So the kids really wanted to go to Kinderberg, so they had to build a bridge. And I'm not saying it was the most sound bridge, but it just was such a typical way in which a problem was presented and the kids had to solve it, and it showed how excited they are to deal with a real issue that they're in charge of coming up with it. So there were all of these skills addressed. I mean, there were math skills and engineering skills, but there were also what maybe are considered soft skills like communication and allowing everybody to have a voice and trying, and also resilience, because like 4 of their bridges failed. So they had to come up with different ideas every single time. And when I tell you that there was no frustration, no hurt feelings, they were helping each other across the bridge. They were cheering for each other. I mean, I could really start tearing up just thinking about it right now. But it was just such a wonderful example of the power of, some people call it free play, but the power of letting events unfold in a real way and letting the kids decide how to deal with it.
Okay. Do you have anything else that you'd like to share? And also, how can listeners find out more about Wonderwalks?
I don't really have too much that I want to share, except that, I hope someone hears this and sees an opportunity for their child, especially if it's a kid who maybe for whatever reason has trouble feeling comfortable in a classroom with, kind of clubs or in sports, that they haven't really found their place where they feel really comfortable. And I would encourage parents and guardians to give Wonderwalks a try, because I've often found that the kids who don't necessarily feel like they have a place in the classroom or in these other outlets that we've set up for them often feel a freedom in Wonderwalks to be who they are and engage in the ways that they come naturally to them, especially kids who have sensory things going on or other types of issues like that. Being outside is, I always say that the kid who is the problem in the classroom is the leader usually in an outdoor setting. And I don't know why that is. I'm not a sociologist or a researcher, so I have no idea why that is, but that keeps coming up. So I'd like to be an outlet for a kid like that. So that's my thing to add. And then in order to get in touch with me or learn more, I do have an Instagram account, and it's at Wonderwalks, because I can't manage too many different things because I'm old. It is a personal account as well as my work account, but my life and work are so interconnected that when it's a personal account, it's like me taking pictures of bugs in my garden and of my kids being outside. So, but I would encourage them to talk about that. And in the saved highlights, they will see they've broken down by semester, and they can look through the highlights of that semester and get an idea of what we do. They can message me on Instagram. I also have a Facebook page in which most of my Instagram posts get posted to Facebook as well. And I have a website. So if you just Google Oxford Wonder Walks, it's just a WordPress website that'll come up, and that will give you the list of classes. And also you can contact me through email on there. Any students listening, or anyone really listening, if anyone ever wants to come and find out what the classes are about, or even intern with me for a semester, I would love that. I have a little bit of money to pay interns, and I could always use another set of adult eyes on the
Perfect.
job. So
thank you so
please
much.
contact me. Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for letting me spout off about it.
Hey, it's Alex Langhart, Director of University Health Services at the University of Mississippi. I'm obsessed with public health and its history, and I'm excited for this opportunity the Roundabout Oxford podcast has given me to share my passion with you in a series called What's Plaguing Us. This segment will be about yellow fever. Summer. It's a magical time when the world bursts into vibrant hues and nature comes alive with a symphony of sounds. It conjures up fond memories, creating a tapestry of happiness, nostalgia, and the simple joys of life. It's a season of carefree adventures where warm, sun-kissed days beckon us to explore and cherish those moments with loved ones. But the heat. Oh my, the heat. And not just regular heat. Mississippi heat. Humidity so thick it feels like hot soup hitting you in your face every time you step outside. And what else comes with the heat? Mosquitoes. They are certainly built different here. My dad would always joke and say that Mississippi mosquitoes could pass as many helicopters. Mosquitoes are more than just a summer nuisance. According to the CDC, over 200 types of mosquitoes live in the continental U.S. and U.S. territories. Of these 200, about 12 types spread disease that can infect people, and mosquito-borne diseases remain a significant global health concern. The disease we will focus on today is yellow fever. It can cause mild illness from a fever with aches and pains to severe liver disease with bleeding and jaundice, or yellowing of the skin. Luckily, this hasn't been a problem for us in the United States for a long time, thanks to improvements in sanitation. But what if I told you that one of the worst epidemics of yellow fever happened right here in Mississippi in 1878? Actually, very close to our beloved Oxford. Let's get into it. The suddenness and violence with which the yellow fever seized upon the western side of our state left but little time for preparation to battle with the terrible scourge. Over quarantine lines and into atmosphere odorous of disinfectants, the yellow plague marched at will, leaving terror, destitution, and death in its track. Many of our people who could do so fled before its approach, but thousands were unable to go to places of safety. That was the grand treasurer of the Oddfellows Fraternal Organization chapter of Mississippi, J.L. Power, from his report of the yellow fever relief worked through in 1879. Researchers believe the epidemic started with certain ships docking in New Orleans coming from Cuba. Sailors and their families started experiencing fever. As boats started to move up the Mississippi River, they carried a little passenger with them called Aedes aegypti. This mosquito then hitched a ride to visit the rest of Mississippi by way of the state's railroad network. Now, there is some debate about the final numbers for Mississippi, but Dr. Deanne Stevens, in her book entitled The 1878 Yellow Fever Epidemic in Mississippi, states that there were over 13,000 cases with 3,200 deaths, a staggering 25% death rate. In fact, Grenada had around 1,000 people of its population flee, and they ended up with approximately 1,050 cases and 350 deaths. Holly Springs was hit hard as well, with over 2,000 deaths. The yellow fever virus is an arbovirus found in tropical and subtropical areas of Africa and South America. As you probably guessed, the virus is spread to people by the bite of an infected mosquito. In the 1897 epidemic, those afflicted reported experiencing a variety of symptoms, such as nausea, constipation, headache, and muscular pains in the legs and back. In severe cases, passive hemorrhaging and black vomit occurred. Damage to the liver, kidneys, and heart could also occur, generally leading to death from renal failure, heart failure, toxemia, or internal infection, especially for those who were immunocompromised. Unfortunately, this was still before germ theory had been accepted. So imagine the fear and panic the population experienced trying to figure out how to stop transmission of what was colloquially being called yellow jack. Physicians focused on controlling fever and ancient practices such as bloodletting. People would wear camphor around their neck and sprinkle carbolic acid on everything. Some even fired cannons and lit fires to fight the miasma or bad air that they thought was causing the pestilence. Even now, there is no cure. Don't mess around with mosquitoes. If you're traveling to an area where yellow fever is endemic, get a vaccine. If you live in an area where the buzz of mosquitoes is the background noise, take preventive measures to avoid their bites. Wear loose-fitting long-sleeve shirts and pants, use insect repellent, and most importantly, eliminate standing water that accumulates from rain or other sources. Don't be their next blood meal. Thanks for listening to this segment of What's Plaguing Us.
Roundabout Oxford was created by Brian Corrigan, Taylor Fields, Abigail Norris Davidson, Alan Munschauer, Christina Streeter, and Alex Watson. Today's episode was produced by Elizabeth Batt, Brian Corrigan, Carmen Sanchez Garcia, Harley Rogers, and Alex Watson, with musical contributions from Brian Corrigan and Gail Herrera. Thank you for listening to Roundabout Oxford.